So Tna Impact took place in Glasgow, Scotland. The show starts with a brief separation backstage as TNA agents get in between Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle on one side, and Magnus, Ethan Carter III, and Rockstar Dud on the other. So then we see Magnus, Ethan, and Dud come to the ring. Magnus says that the faces are pissed about Sting no longer being with the company, and that along with Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles, he was responsible for Sting being booted. He says that he and Dixie are going to rid TNA of the old veterans and streamline the company with the younger wrestlers. Magnus shoots off names and fails to mention Ethan, who reacts unfavorably to the omission. Ethan grabs a mic and questions why Magnus would claim to eliminate Hardy, Styles, and Sting by himself, but Magnus mocks him and brushes him off. As Ethan attempts to come back at Magnus again, Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe come to the ring, causing Magnus, Ethan, and Dud to bail. Angle says that he and Joe came to the UK to get revenge for what Dixieland did to Sting. He says that the difficulty of seeing Sting go was one of the worst moments for him in his tenure with the company. Angle says that this is not about Magnus just defeating Sting. It's about his resorting to getting help from his stablemates in order to do it. He repeats Sting's darts about Magnus being an unworthy champion and expresses how he, Joe, and Sting wish that they had not brought Magnus into the main event Mafia. Angle says that they wanted Magnus to be the guy. But Magnus says that when he joined, he was already the guy. And because of that, he would eventually become the champion. Joe gets on the mic and tells Magnus that he and Angle are pissed that he's not buried and gone, and that they are there to do the job. Magnus challenges Angle and Joe to a match against himself and Ethan, but adds the stipulation that if Angle and Joe lose, they must leave the company. Joe counters with his own demand that if either he or Angle pin Magnus or make him submit, that individual becomes the number one contender for the title. Joe wants Magnus to think before responding because the risk might be too overwhelming for a weak champion to deal with. But Magnus accepts the terms. Dixie Carter comes out and says that the match is not going down because she doesn't need any additional crap to deal with, because the new company investor is set to reveal himself on the show. She says that Magnus can't risk losing the match, but he ignores her and tells Joe and Angle to get ready to go later. This was a solid segment which not only showcased the building tension between Magnus and Samoa Joe, but the continuing erosion between Magnus and Ethan. The career on the line or contract on the line stipulation is becoming redundant as it loses its meaning. In this case, it's pointless to do it for this match because it's obvious that Joe and Angle aren't going to lose. So then we see a minivan limo pull up outside the arena. And the speculation is that the new investor is inside the vehicle. After the commercial break, the door to the vehicle opens and we see a cameraman approach. The American Wolves make their exit and Davey Richards tells the cameraman to stand down. Eddie Edwards says that everyone will eventually know who the investor is. Richards tells the cameraman that any approach to the investor has to be cleared by them, and they go inside. So then we had a women's tag team match. Velvet Sky and Madison Rayne versus Gail Kim and Lady Tapa. So-so match. The match ends with Gail doing a complete job fest for Velvet Sky as we see Velvet go through her riveting moveset, which features her barely connecting arm taps, her barely connecting elbow, her handful of hair bulldog, and her net breaker with 0% torque. She gets the pin on Gail with her in your face. The winners of the match, Velvet Sky and Madison Rayne. Gail, on top of getting the jobber treatment by being in the ring already, was bad enough. But Gail deserves credit for having to do a dirty job such as this in order to serve someone else's creative purpose. Only the nucleus can do that. Tapa not launching any offense during the match is not surprising because this was about Velvet, but it seems to say something about TNA's lack of comfort with her. Now, this match was referred to as a reunion of the beautiful people. Sort of. If Angelina Love is not there, then it's not a reunion. And the fact that the pre-match video clip as well as the match commentary omitted Angelina Love as if she were never a part of the group was insulting. Basically, this was a match that TNA just wanted to get out of the way. So then we see Chris Sabin come to the ring. He tells Madison to get out of the ring and yells at Velvet, wanting to know why she hasn't communicated with him in the span of 7 days. Sabin blames Velvet for his losing the X Division title to Austin Aries because she didn't have his back. After wondering whether her having her period had anything to do with that, he tells her that if she apologizes, he'll forgive her and she can rub him down. As he waits for the words, Velvet takes the mic and tells him that it's over. She leaves. What was the point of having the women's match? Sabin could have just come out and bitched about Velvet not helping him retain this title, and then Velvet comes out to answer to him. This would have been better than forcing a match that didn't advance anyone or anything. So then we see Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe walking down the hallway talking about what they need to do tonight in reference to their match. They burst through a door and Angle grabs Robert Roode. He holds Roode down and Joe pulls him off. Angle blames Roode for his role in Styles and Sting no longer being with TNA. Roode wants Angle to acknowledge that he's a constant danger to him and tells him that he will eliminate him as he has in the past, but not him and Joe together. Joe grabs Roode's neck and takes him down. He tells Roode that instead of choosing to snap his neck, he wants him to think about the consequences that he'll face if he inserts himself in the main event match. Joe releases his hold and he and Angle leave. Roode is choking on his saliva, but then he stops and smiles. So then we see James Storm come to the ring. After getting his cheapie out of the way, Storm says that his relationship with Gunner began before Gunner came to the company, and that it would eventually result in them getting the tag team gold. He said that a particular problem has created an issue between them that needs to be settled, so he calls out Gunner, and he comes to the ring. Gunner says that he and Storm set a goal in TNA to be the best that they can be, and that they've accomplished that as a team and as buddies. He says that ever since he obtained the world title shot briefcase, things have gone south. Gunner says that he doesn't regret how he got the briefcase during the Feast or Fired match, because he did it to provide for himself and his family, and that Storm would have done the same if the scenario had presented itself. Gunner acknowledges the talks that he has had with Storm about his time in the military. He says that he served for the guys that fought with him, not for the politicians giving the orders. Gunner says that just as he battled to the max for his fellow soldiers, he did the same for Storm. Storm says that he appreciates Gunner opening up to him about his war experiences and tells him that his excellence shines on every level. He says that despite the things that he loves to do the most, his family is top priority. Storm says that his daughter questioning his negativity toward Gunner made him realize that he was wrong about his attitude toward him. And Storm tells Gunner that he wants to support him fully and apologizes. They shake hands, but then Bad Influence comes to the ring. Kazarian tells Gunner that he should be wary of Storm and tells Storm that despite what he likes to do, he wants to be world champion like everyone else. Christopher Daniels takes the mic and challenges Storm and Gunner to a match against himself and Kazarian, with the stipulation that if he and Kazarian win, they'll get Gunner's briefcase. Storm and Gunner respond with punches, so that leads into James Storm and Gunner versus Bad Influence. Decent match. The match ends with Gunner rolling Christopher Daniels up for an inside cradle for the pin, but Daniels kicks out. Daniels delivers a couple of knees to Gunner's midsection and hits him with an enziguri. Daniels goes for the Angel's wings, but Gunner backdrops him. He makes a tag to Storm, who comes at Daniels with blows before whipping him off the ropes. However, Daniels reverses the whip, but receives a flying forearm from Storm. Storm delivers a reverse atomic knee drop and follows that with a clothesline. He charges the corner, but Daniels propels him over the top rope and onto the ring apron. Storm responds with a kick to the back of the head, then goes to the top rope and comes off with a flying body press. He goes for the pin, but Kazarian comes into the ring and attempts an elbow drop. Storm moves out of the way and Kazarian ends up nailing Daniels. Storm tosses Kazarian over the top rope, then lifts Daniels for the eye of the Storm. Storm backs up to the corner and Kazarian is able to release Daniels from Storm's grasp. Kazarian goes to the top rope and comes off with a missile dropkick. The momentum sends Storm into the corner and he tags in Gunner. Gunner hits Kazarian with a running knee, an axe handle, and a headbutt. He charges the corner and smashes Kazarian, and he follows that with a slingshot suplex. Gunner goes to the top rope and Daniels tries to interfere, but Storm hits Daniels with a superkick, which sends Daniels to the floor. Gunner comes off with a flying headbutt and pins Kazarian for the 3. The winners of the match, James, Storm, and Gunner. I thought the segment was okay, and I liked how Gunner worked in his service with the Marines to emphasize why Storm should support him. However, I don't get why Gunner has to continue to put up the world title briefcase up in matches. TNA is making the briefcase as valuable as a championship, and that shouldn't be the case. As for Bad Influence, instead of having them go for a briefcase containing a shot at the world championship in which only one of them would benefit from it, why not have them go after the world tag team championship so that both of them can benefit from that? So then we see Dixie Carter backstage freaking out over whom the new company investor may be, and Rockstar Dud is trying to calm her down, and she wants him to find out the identity of the investor. So then we see a video promo on Samoa Joe's tenure in TNA. This was a good video on Joe, and it further builds his momentum toward his eventual confrontation with Magnus. So then we see Dixie Carter on the phone with her lawyer from last week. She chews him out for not getting the results that he said he would make happen. Robert Roode enters the room, still feeling the remnants of Samoa Joe's choke fest as he holds his neck. Dixie tells Roode that unless he can provide the identity of the investor, she doesn't want to hear him. Roode says that he wants a title shot at Lockdown. Dixie says no to that, but Roode reminds her that she promised it to him and recalls what he did for Magnus by serving up AJ Styles and Sting for him. Dixie takes out her checkbook, but Roode tells her that money isn't going to do it. Roode says that she has until next week to find a solution to the issue, or Roode will leave Dixieland. You certainly don't need to see a spoiler to know that Dixie's solution to this will be to put Roode up against whomever becomes the number one contender for the title, with that contendership on the line. As far as the speculation that I've been hearing about Roode turning face, No. Certain wrestlers, whether from the past or the present, are just meant to be heels. Because it wouldn't look and feel right otherwise, and he's one of them. So then we see Eric Young and ODB backstage. Young is excited about the chance to win the tag team belts with Abyss, but ODB questions him as to whether messing with Abyss is worth it. Despite her concerns, Young wants to go through with what he's doing. And Abyss appears, and Young verbally preps him for their match. So then we see Rockstar Dud backstage, and he says that he's going to go to the ring and demand that the American Wolves give him the info as to whom the new investor is. And then we see Rockstar Dud, and he runs his mouth saying absolutely nothing relevant. He calls out the American Wolves, and they come to the ring. Dud wants to know who the investor is, and they say nothing. Dud slaps Davey Richards, and they respond by double teaming Dud and executing the alarm clock. Eddie Edwards tells Dud that everyone will find out the identity of the investor at the same time. He goes on to say that the investor has mandated that if anyone gets involved in the main event that shouldn't be involved, that person will lose his job. Now, at one point, Edwards referred to the investor as they. Whether that was a mistake or not remains to be seen. Richards and Edwards came off fairly well as they dominated Dud, who is still annoying and irritating, and no, that's not the intent. Just as it's not the intent with Dixie Carter or the glorified jobbers. She sucks, they suck, he sucks. So then we had the X Division Championship. World Tag Team Championship. The Glorified Jobbers versus Eric Young and Abyss. Okay match. The match ends with Abyss smashing Robbie E. and Mr. Duh and sending both of them out of the ring. Zema Ion goes to the top rope and Abyss grabs him by the neck. For some unknown reason, the referee starts giving the 5 count. Abyss turns toward the referee and picks him up on his shoulders. Young pleads to Abyss to put him down and focus on winning the belts, but he ends up delivering the shock treatment to the referee. Then Abyss grabs Young by the neck and chokeslams him. He leaves the ring, but then Young challenges him to a Monsters Ball match next week. Eric Young is so much better than this storyline, and I hope that TNA puts an end to his involvement with Abyss / dumbass Joseph Park so that his talent can be put to a use that suits him. So then we see the American Wolves back outside at the vehicle with the company investor. As Richards talks to the investor, Edwards prevents the cameraman from approaching the vehicle and even threatens him. Then we see Bully Ray rolling a coffin backstage. So then we see Sam Shaw and Christy Hemme at Shaw's apartment having wine. Christy points out that his hand is over a lit candle, but Shaw brushes it off as it's nothing. As if it's nothing. Ugh. She eagerly wants to see the rest of his place, so they go up to his bedroom. As Chrissy looks out the window, Shaw creeps up behind her and strokes her hair, removing strands of it. He smells the strands and puts them in his pocket as they leave. We see an unlit room that Christy wants to enter, but Shaw tells her to get some more wine. He goes into the room and turns on the light. There are pictures of Christy all over the wall, and there is a shrine with a mannequin wearing a red wig. Shaw attaches the strands of Christie's hair to the wig and kisses the cheek of the mannequin before leaving. I like the progression of the Sam Shaw character, but the only problem I had with this is Christy Hemi's regression. The last time we saw her interact with Shaw, she was watching his debut match from ringside. She showed her slight disgust as he kept staring at her. So how do they go from that to Christy prancing around Shaw's apartment wanting to see the place as if she's oblivious to his mannerisms toward her? Despite that, the storyline is moving along nicely. So then we see Bully Ray rolling the coffin out to the ring. He gets on the mic and goes through his shtick about who he is, where he's from, and what he used to be. Once again, he blames Mr. Anderson for his loss of the things that meant the most to him. Bully Ray says that he continues to take out Anderson, but Anderson keeps returning. He challenges Anderson to a coffin match, but then Anderson comes to the ring. Both men face each other on opposite sides of the coffin, and Anderson wants Bully Ray to confirm that he's going to put him in it. He asks Bully Ray that if he does that, then what? Bully Ray tells him that he's going to drive his wife and kids into the ground, then repeats the threat by putting sexual emphasis on Anderson's wife. Anderson says that he's going to close Bully Ray's yap for good. He flips up the coffin lid, which hits Bully Ray in the head. Anderson rams his head into the coffin and throws a few blows. He grabs a chair and throws it into the ring, shoving Bully Ray in with it. Anderson charges the corner, but Bully Ray hits him with an elbow. Bully Ray goes to the middle rope, but Anderson punches him in the midsection. He lifts Bully Ray up and delivers the rolling fireman's carry slam. Anderson hits Bully Ray twice with the chair, and with Bully Ray hanging on to the top rope from the ring apron, he attempts to hit him a third time. Bully Ray backs off the ring apron and retreats. This segment was fine, although I can understand the criticism that this program has received because of the Aces and Eights references. Bully Ray has now become a hybrid of his pseudo-emo loner and his Aces and Eights persona. And this program has been based on Bully Ray blaming Anderson for the end of the club. The interest is starting to wane, so the coffin match should definitely be the last meeting between the two. So then we see a video segment featuring Kurt Angle with the theme of his being a cybernetic machine. Another good video. So then we see Magnus and Ethan Carter III backstage. Ethan asks Magnus if he's in the go mode, and Magnus tells him that he always is because he's the number one man. He tells Ethan that what separates them is that his initial action is more effective than a reaction, and that he uses his mind rather than his muscle to succeed. Magnus says that he's fine with the fact that they can't stand each other and that he can't tolerate the idea of a Kermit teaming with him in a match that directly involves a serious threat to his title. As Ethan tries to accuse Magnus of finding reasons to blame others rather than himself, Magnus tells him that he's a Richie with no substance that has the benefit of being Dixie's nephew. Ethan counters by reminding Magnus that the green he should be worried about is Dixie's financial backing of him as the champion. Then Dixie walks into the room and asks them if they're prepared. Magnus does a fake put-over of Ethan, and Dixie tells him that they must eliminate Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle. Dixie decides to accompany Magnus to the ring, but warns Ethan to not fuck up. So now Dixie's apparent favoritism toward Magnus, along with the current divide between Magnus and Ethan, could either cause Ethan to try to do whatever he can to get Dixie to see his true value since Magnus refuses to, or turn face and challenge Magnus. since he's her nephew and since he's still building his foundation as an effective heel, the first option would probably make more sense. So then we have the main event. Magnus and Ethan Carter III versus Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe. Solid match. During the match, the American Wolves and the company investor enter the arena. The match ends with Ethan whipping Angle across the ring to the corner. Ethan charges and misses with a flying knee as Angle moves out of the way. Angle follows that with a German. Angle and Ethan make simultaneous tags to their partners, and Joe hits Magnus with a couple of clotheslines. He whips Magnus into the corner, and as Magnus comes out from the corner, Joe delivers a reverse atomic knee drop. He comes off the ropes and sends Magnus down with a kick to the chest, then executes a flying senton. Joe delivers a chop to the chest and sends Magnus into the ropes, but Magnus catches Joe with a kick to the upper body. He comes off the ropes, but Joe hits him with a snap power slam. Joe locks Magnus in an armbar submission, but Ethan breaks it up with repeated kicks. Angle grabs Ethan's leg, pulls him to the outside of the ring, and flips him with an overhead belly-to-belly. Magnus yells at Ethan, then turns to a chop from Joe. Joe goes into the ropes, and as he comes off, Magnus goes into the ropes on the same side. As Magnus comes off the ropes, Joe takes him down with the rear naked choke. Magnus taps out. The winners of the match, Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe. Joe becomes the number one contender for the world title. After the match, Dixie Carter comes out, dragging Rockstar Dud with her. She berates Magnus for not listening to her earlier, and Magnus yells at Ethan, blaming him for the loss. Joe takes the mic and tells Magnus not to pin the loss on Ethan because he was the one who submitted. Then he tells Magnus to get the belt ready for him. Angle takes the mic and says that the Glasgow crowd atmosphere is what makes him get through the pain of being in the business that he loves. He says that because of his win over Rude in the cage and the win on this show, he's ready to enter the Hall of Fame. And Angle tells Dixie to make sure that the investor shows up when he's inducted. Then Dixie wants the investor to come out. The lights go out. The American Wolves come out. And the investor comes out. And it's Montel Porter. Show ends. Free agent signing. Quentin Jackson. August 1st warning. Tito Ortiz. New TNA investor. Montel Porter. Once again, TNA overhypes with supposed earth-shattering news and underwhelms with the result. Now we're faced with yet another potential power battle in TNA, a theme that has been running consistently for the last few years. The upcoming program between Magnus and Samoa Joe should be the sole focus, but now it will likely be swallowed up as the attention is placed on those whom TNA feels needs it. And other wrestlers will have to bow down to the upcoming static. Dixie Carter versus Montel Porter. New direction, new era, new bullshit. I'm Tazmark 2002, and that was my Tna Impact Analysis for January 30th, 2014. If you're listening to me on YouTube, please leave your comments below. Click the like or dislike button, and if you subscribe, I would really appreciate it. If you're listening to me on the Wrestling News Talk Facebook page, you can leave your comments below and click the like button if you like what I've been saying. If you have any questions or comments for me about TNA or wrestling in general, you can get at me on Twitter Tazmark 2002. That's TAZMARK 2002. And if your comments exceed the 140, get at me with an email. Tazmark2002@gmail.com. And be sure to watch the Tna Impact review that I do with Chuck P. live every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern Time on Chuck P's YouTube channel. And if you can't watch us live, you can always check out the archives. And make sure you check out Chuck P's channel as well as that of our brother, Carl Cleveland. Decent show. So the match is set. On one side there is Samoa Joe, the bruising powerhouse that plans to be the wrecking ball that will go through whatever to taste the gold. On the other side there is Magnus, a man who claimed that in order for his championship reign to mean something, he had to prove that he can win on his own. He hasn't done that. In the matches against Jeff Hardy, AJ Styles, and Sting, Magnus has relied on the other members of Dixieland to save his ass and allow him to appear more powerful than he is. TNA wants to book him as a so-called paper champion, but the fans deserve better. At Lockdown, we deserve to see a match in which two men collide as if that championship figuratively represents living or dying. Win or lose, let Magnus allow the title to define the champion that he should be instead of being the champion that Dixieland is making him to be. I'm Tazmark 2002. Gone.